the Boston Bruins have their next head coach that they're going to fire. Marco Sturm is now the head coach of the Boston Bruins. It took forever. It took over 6 weeks in this coaching search. Exhaustive, maybe. But we heard rumblings about Marco Sturm being the guy 3 weeks ago. We heard a straight-up report 9 days ago, that Marco Sturm was going to be the next head coach of the Bruins. And it takes until Thursday, June 5th, the day in between games 1 and 2 of the Stanley Cup final, and a postseason that you didn't even qualify for. And yes, the last team in the league to fill their head coaching vacancy. Before I get into Marco Sturm, like in the nitty gritty, I know there will be some people that will talk about the Pete DeBoer thing, which I've talked about on the show the last few days. I was saying if the Bruins somehow just fail upwards into Pete DeBoer here, that would be a huge, huge move. And obviously he's not been fired by Dallas yet, and he might not get fired. But now there are going to be people saying, well, of course it took a long time. They were kicking the tires on Pete DeBoer. Like, Pete DeBoer hasn't been fired. We didn't even hear a report that he might be fired until this week. There was still 5 weeks in between, the Bruins, 6 weeks almost, the Bruins getting eliminated in the final regular season game and actually hiring a head coach. But Marco Sturm is the guy. Again, I don't know why they jerked us around an extra week. We had already blown our load. Like, we had already knew it was going to be Marco Sturm. I don't know why they jerked us around for a whole other week, but that is the guy. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. It doesn't hit me in the right spots. Do I hate the hire? How can I? Do I love the hire? No. How can I? How can you? Like, seriously, what fires you up about Marco Sturm? Because I'm seeing a lot of Bruins fans on social media today. Oh, it's a great hire. Mikey Grinelli from Spittin' Chicklets. How can you not love this hire? It's like, I don't know, because why would I love this hire? He was an assistant coach for the Kings for a couple of years. He's been the head coach of the AHL Ontario Reign, the Kings AHL affiliate, for the last 3 years. They've had some success. He's made the playoffs all 3 years. He has not advanced past the second round. Got swept in the first round in 23, swept in the second round in 24, swept in the first round in 25. Sounds like he'll fit right in. Doesn't like getting past the second round. That's a Don Sweeney, an absolute Don Sweeney layup right there. That's Donnie's guy. And what I didn't want from this is for this to become like, oh, he's just a member of the family. Because you can point to that, right? He played for the Bruins for 5 years. And as I've talked about time and time again on this show, this franchise can't help themselves. They need to be incestual. They need to bring Bruins back. They've done it for decades. And the first time they didn't do it at the two most important positions on the team, which is the head coach and the general manager, the first time they went outside the family for those two positions, they won the Stanley Cup. They got Peter Chiarelli and they got Claude Julien. And they won the cup. But outside of that, it's been in the family kind of stuff, whether it's the GM or the head coach or both. And now you've got both. Because what I didn't want the Bruins to do was to lean into this. Marco Sturm was an okay player here for a bit of his career, 5 years, not quite half his career. He didn't make it past the second round here. It wasn't like he was this all-star. He scored a memorable goal. A couple of memorable goals. Game 6 in 08 against Montreal. The game winner against Philadelphia in the Winter Classic. He's an alternate captain. But let's not pretend like we're bringing this legend back. Because really, the Bruins shouldn't be leaning into that. The Bruins should be leaning into the fact that he is an up-and-coming coach. Right? He was an assistant for a good NHL team. He was a head coach for an AHL team that was known for developing young talent for the big club. That's what we should be focusing on. And instead, what is the first tweet the Bruins have about it? Marco's coming home. A Bruin, now head coach of the Bruins. Just what the fans want. Because I really think at this point, with where the Bruins have gone and what we have seen with the head coaching hires and all the decisions under Don Sweeney, we didn't want to see that. We didn't want to see, oh, it's another great Bruin coming home. We don't care about that anymore. We want a good, competent coach in here. That's what we want. And there are rave reviews for Marco Sturm, namely that he is a great communicator and the players love him. That sounds an awful lot like the scouting report on Jim Montgomery, does it not? Is that not exactly what we heard about Jim Montgomery? Great communicator. Boy, these guys like playing for him. And how did that work out? The guy didn't have a plan, and he was far from the only problem with the Bruins. Don't get me wrong. I think Don Sweeney was a much bigger problem than Jim Montgomery. But when you had that big disconnect between the GM and the head coach, and a head coach who was mailing it in his final season with the Bruins, the final month plus with the Bruins, then I don't really care that he's a great communicator. In fact, I couldn't care less about that if there's no plan and there's no direction. This is all in all a lame duck hire. That the Boston Bruins, Don Sweeney talking about in his exit press conference that who would want to turn down 100 years of tradition? Who would not want to come and coach the Boston Bruins? Apparently most people. Most people. Because we're talking about a minor league coach who has not gotten past the second round. And you want to talk about a guy who can evolve offensively? He better be able to evolve offensively because they've got a lot of work to do there. I've talked about it on this show quite a bit. A power play that was 26th out of 32 teams in the AHL at 17%. A goals for that was 6th in his own division in the AHL. So yeah, Marco Sturm's got a lot of room to improve on that. What they didn't talk about, what I think is actually good for the Bruins, is the fact that the Kings have had a damn good defensive structure the last 5, 6, 7 years. And it's really evolved into them becoming a player in the Western Conference again. Now, with the stupid playoff format, they can't get past Edmonton, or else they might have made a couple of conference finals. But alas, they are a solid team. They're a good defensive team. And Marco Sturm has developed, apparently, some of those young guys on the team, like Quentin Byfield. The Bruins can use I actually think they can use a defensive coach here. But somebody with a plan. That's the thing. It's not that Montgomery was a bad offensive coach or a bad defensive coach. He just didn't have a plan. They didn't have a play style. And part of that is because you brought a coach in Montgomery and didn't even let him pick his own assistants. They've got to be the only team in pro sports that does that. They have to be. And now they bring in a guy who has not been a head coach in the NHL before, who's begging for this kind of opportunity so that Don Sweeney can keep him on the puppet strings. You think Marco Sturm is going to bring in a coaching staff with him? Of course not. This is just another person for Don Sweeney to control. Jay Leach, you get to keep a job. Bob Asenza, you get to keep a job, which I'm happy about. I think he's the best goalie coach in the league. But all these guys will get to hold on to their jobs and will keep the continuity from a team that finished second to last in the Eastern Conference last year. Most teams don't want to run that back. The Bruins do. The Bruins don't want to get, a grizzled veteran head coach in here who's got his own play style, who will bring his own guys. They don't want that. Don Sweeney wants a guy he can control and possibly keep Jay Leach on the staff. Maybe even bring Chris Kelly back. In fact, I'll bet Joe Sacco was on the table for an assistant coaching job, but now he's jettisoned off to New York. I can't believe that he even stuck around this long because he was in the race to become the Bruins head coach. He's going to go become an assistant for Mike Sullivan with the Rangers, the guy the Bruins probably should have hired at the beginning of this whole process. Mike Sullivan, not Joe Sacco. So is it fine at this point, I guess, but you weighted yourself out of all options. Like who was the other option? Jay Woodcroft? Wasn't loving that. Speaking of love, I really would have preferred Mitch Love. There's a guy who actually has tangible evidence of coaching a very good defense in the NHL with Washington last year and unleashed a couple of defensemen and made them great two-way players. Jacob Chikrin, chief among them. I don't know. That's the guy I would have wanted. Coming from a staff headed by, of course, Spencer Carberry, a guy you probably should have hired in hindsight over Jim Montgomery. But no, they wanted to keep it in the family. A guy who they really should be running away from that narrative. Because in reality, he's not part of the family. He hasn't been part of this team, a part of the Bruins in 15 years. He was a player on the team 3 head coaches ago. They should be running from that narrative, and instead they're leaning into it. They're leaning into exactly what Bruins fans don't want. And I'll say this. This has to be just the beginning. Because this is was supposed to be a make or break summer for general manager Don Sweeney. Remember, that's basically what Cam Neely said in the exit press conference back in April. That this is kind of make or break here. And before anything happened, before a draft, before free agency, before he even hired a coach, a month into the process, they extended him. They did the classic Bruins, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, give him the smallest extension we can, 2 years. And so in a prove-it year, Don Sweeney proves absolutely nothing, and gets an extension. And so all that to build up to say, if you were going to have this be a make or break offseason, was Don Sweeney going to hire Marco Sturm? Is that really where you think he was going to go? I mean, maybe he's stupid enough. He's not a good GM, so maybe. But I think most qualified GMs in this league in a make or break year would be really hard after Mike Sullivan, who's won 2 Stanley Cups. Or maybe you make a bold move and go out and get Joel Quenneville out of obscurity with his 3 Stanley Cups. Instead, you extended him and he hired an AHL coach who played for you 15 years ago. And that's the biggest move of the offseason right now for the Bruins. And if it is the biggest move for the offseason come training camp, this would be an absolute failure, and they're going to finish in the basement. They might anyway. But this is just the first step. The Bruins really need talent. They have a huge talent gap, and I don't think Marco Sturm is a good enough coach to overcome that. Call me crazy. To be fair, I don't know if there was really anyone on the market that was going to really bridge this gap, this talent gap right now. Quenneville, maybe, but he hasn't coached in the league in a couple of years. Mike Sullivan, I think eventually, but not right now. I mean, he just coached Pittsburgh the last couple of years, and they've been dog shit. So it's not like you have a Band-Aid coach to come in here. You need to get some talent. But it's, again, just 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Always afraid to put your cock and balls on the table and make a real move. Marco Sturm, Winter Classic 2010. That's the friggin' graphic they put up on social media. It's 3 pictures of him scoring the game-winning goal in the Winter Classic. Remember this, guys? Remember this? Now he's our head coach. Who wouldn't want that? Like, am I a Debbie Downer for saying it does absolutely nothing for me? Like, Mitch Love, not that that's the biggest name on the market, but I'm buying into that. Misha Donskov, the assistant for the Stars, that everybody loves, this game plan wizard who worked in a front office for an expansion team that went to the Stanley Cup final in their first season and then was an assistant on the bench when they won the Stanley Cup. For a coach that you probably shouldn't have fired, Bruce Cassidy. They've tried the hard-ass route in Bruce Cassidy. They've tried the nice guy route in Jim Montgomery. And neither one was apparently good enough for you. You fired them both. Fired them both after playoff seasons. Fired them both after they won Jack Adams awards. So, is this an in-between? Is Marco Sturm going to really ream out Charlie McAvoy and David Pastrnak? it does nothing for me. It does absolutely nothing for me. But Marco Sturm is the next head coach here, Boston Bruins. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're happy about this Bruins hire, we are well on the path towards 4,000 subscribers. We need your help in getting there. But get involved in that comment section and let me know what you think. We are live on YouTube as we are every weekday, high noon Eastern time, and then available wherever you get your podcasts as well. Check out the other videos on the channel, talking a lot of Bruins and Boston sports as a whole. I'm your host, Cam Stuart. Zach Burke keeps us on the air 5 days a week.